Hey guys, tonight we begin in a place where winter doesn't politely knock. It kicks the door in, steals your socks, and stays for 8 months. So dim the lights, loosen your jaw, let your phone fall gently onto your chest, and drift with me to Yakutia, also known as the Sakha Republic, which is basically Russia's freezer drawer. This is the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. And yes, people chose to live here, which already tells you everything you need to know about human decision-making. Now, Yakutia isn't just cold, it's the kind of cold that feels personal, like the atmosphere has a grudge. In winter, temperatures regularly drop to -40, -50, sometimes -60 degrees Celsius. At that point, numbers stop meaning anything. Your eyelashes freeze together, metal snaps like a cookie, spit turns into ice before it finishes leaving your mouth, which makes Yakutia less of a region and more of a long-term science experiment about stubbornness. But people live here, they raise children here, they drink tea here, they argue about politics here, they complain about the cold here, in the cold, because complaining is also heat. Let's start with the land itself. Yakutia is massive, larger than India, larger than Argentina, larger than your sense of dread when you forget your charger. It is mostly permafrost, ground that never fully thaws, which means every building is built on stilts, because if you heat the soil, it melts, and then your house sinks, which is considered bad for morale. The rivers freeze solid, not thin ice frozen, but drive a truck across it frozen. And they stay that way for months. The Lena River becomes a highway, a slippery, moody highway. Villages are scattered like afterthoughts, small clusters of houses, wrapped in smoke, buried in snow, each one holding people who wake up every day and say, yes, still here. Now, let's meet those people. The Sakha, or Yakut people, are Turkic-speaking and have lived here for centuries. They arrived long ago, looked around, and said, this will do. They brought horses, which is bold, because horses are famously into warm weather. But Yakut horses evolved into fuzzy tanks, short legs, thick fur, a face that says, I didn't choose this, but I'm handling it. These horses dig through snow to reach frozen grass, which is a sentence no animal should have to live out. Cows exist too, Yakut cows, which are basically walking wool sweaters with horns. Everything here evolves toward smaller ears, thicker fur, slower metabolism, and emotional acceptance. Now, daily life. In winter, the sun barely shows up. In some places, it barely rises at all. So people wake up in darkness, go to work in darkness, return home in darkness, which gives the soul a very beige personality. Children still go to school until about -50. That's the cutoff. Below that, the buses won't start, and also the children become popsicles. Breath crystallizes instantly. Moisture is an enemy. Sweat is a betrayal. You dress in layers that sound like a sandwich order. Fur hat, fur boots, fur coat, fur feelings. Inside homes, it's warm, very warm, sometimes too warm, which leads to people opening windows in January at -40 to get some fresh air, which is confidence. Traditional homes were yurts, insulated with animal skins. Fire in the middle, smoke drifting up through a hole in the roof, everyone sitting around quietly chewing frozen meat. And yes, the food is special, because vegetables, well, have opinions about this climate, and those opinions are no. So diets became heavy in meat and fat, horse meat, reindeer, fish frozen raw and sliced like sashimi, milk products fermented until they fight back. There's a famous dish called stroganina. It is raw frozen fish sliced thin with a knife, served with salt and pepper because heat is optional.
The freezer is nature. Nature is the freezer. There is no middleman. Now, imagine trying to be sick here with a cold in the cold. Doctors work miracles with thermometers that stop working below certain temperatures. Medicine freezes. IV lines freeze. Everything freezes except your problems. Even funerals are complicated. The ground is rock solid, so graves are dug in summer or blasted with fire because grief needs logistics. Now, let's float gently over to the emotional side. Long winters make people quiet, not sad, just inward. Yakut culture values endurance, silence, respect for spirits, respect for weather, and fear of mosquitoes in summer, because yes, summer exists, briefly, and then the mosquitoes arrive like a biblical event. Summer brings green fields, horses grazing, festivals and weddings. There's a festival called Isiak. It celebrates the return of the sun, which is a reasonable thing to celebrate when the sun left you emotionally in October. People wear traditional clothes, drink kumis, fermented mare's milk, dance in circles, and remember that life can be warm. But winter always returns, slowly, patiently, like it paid rent. Now, let's talk about Oymyakon, the coldest inhabited place on Earth. Recorded temperature minus 67.7 Celsius, which is less a temperature and more a warning. Cars must be kept running constantly. If you turn it off, it dies, not dramatically, just quietly. People don't cry outside. Tears freeze on their face, which turns sadness into face crystals. Phones stop working, plastic snaps, metal burns skin. And yet, there are schools, shops, a post office, life. Why do people stay? Because it's home, because ancestors survived, because reindeer still need herding, because leaving is expensive, because everywhere else feels fake. Yakutia also sits on massive mineral wealth, diamonds, gold, gas. So cities like Yakutsk exist, concrete blocks on stilts, pipes wrapped in insulation, steam rising everywhere like the city is sighing. It's modern, but only just. And here is the irony. Climate change is warming Yakutia, which sounds good, until permafrost melts, buildings tilt, ancient graves open, mammoth bones surface, and old diseases wake up confused. The land remembers everything, and now it's thawing. So the hardest winter on Earth is changing, but the people remain, quiet, wrapped, enduring. And as you lie there, warm and safe, imagine waking tomorrow in minus 50 to feed horses and cut frozen fish and open a window for fresh air. Because that is the real Yakutia, and we will continue drifting through it.
So, welcome back. If you're still awake, congratulations. Your ancestors would be proud. Or concerned. Possibly both. Last time, we drifted through frozen rivers and fur-covered cows. Tonight, let's sink a little deeper. Into childhood, belief, and the strange emotional weather of a place where the sun goes missing for weeks at a time. Let's start small, with children. Growing up in Yakutia means learning code before you learn algebra. Babies are wrapped like burritos, layers upon layers. You don't dress a child, you build them. Parents don't ask, "Is it cold today?" They ask, "Is it dangerous today?" School still happens because education does not fear frostbite. Kids walk to class in moonlight, breath puffing like tiny factory chimneys, faces hidden in scarves until only eyes remain, which makes every child look like a very small bank robber. Recess is short, not because they hate fun, but because fun freezes. Hands go numb in minutes, so mittens are serious business. Not fashion mittens, survival mittens. And kids here don't complain much. They learn quickly that cold does not negotiate. It just arrives. Now, emotionally, this does something interesting. Long darkness creates introspection. Kids grow up calm, quiet, observant. Instead of running around yelling, they sit and listen to elders, to stories, to the crackle of fire. Which brings us to spirits. Traditional Saka beliefs mix shamanism and nature worship. Everything has a spirit: the forest, the river, the frost. Cold is not evil, it is powerful, like an old relative who refuses to leave. Shamans once mediated between humans and weather. They sang to storms, argued with frost, negotiated with fire. And people believed the cold listened. Because honestly, when it's -50, you start believing in things too. Even today, many people quietly respect old customs. They don't whistle inside. They don't anger the forest. They leave offerings during festivals, just in case. Because offending a spirit in a place with no mercy feels like poor planning. Now, let's float gently into work. Jobs in Yakutia are specific. You can be a reindeer herder, which is like being a cowboy but colder and with more antlers. You can work on the ice roads, seasonal highways built over frozen rivers. They only exist in winter, which is when the river pretends to be land. Truck drivers haul fuel, food, and supplies across ice that is both road and potential grave. One crack, and the job becomes swimming. Briefly. Then there are miners. Mines sleep under frozen soil, so people drill into permafrost like surgeons with jackhammers. Everything takes longer. Everything costs more. Everything hurts your face. And yet, people socialize. In winter, you don't go out casually. You commit to going out. Visiting someone means planning clothes like an expedition. You don't pop over. You prepare. Once inside, coats come off. Tea comes out. Meat appears. Conversation becomes slow and cozy. Yakut homes are warm, overheated even, because the cold is waiting outside like a bouncer. This creates a strange contrast. Outside is deadly, inside is intimate. Families sit close, rooms are small, privacy is theoretical, which leads to emotional closeness and occasional emotional explosions. Cabin fever is real. 8 months of winter will test any marriage. People argue about small things, dishes, boot placement, who let the cold air in, and yet they stay. Now, let's float gently toward one very special place, Oimakan. This village is famous for being unbelievably cold, but what's less famous is that it's normal. There's a store, a school, a sign that shows the temperature, which is mostly for bragging. Residents go about life. They hang laundry outside, which freezes into stiff clothing statues. They fish through holes in ice. They drive with engines always running. They sleep like anywhere else. And kids there don't feel heroic. They feel bored. Cold is not exciting when it's your background. It's just weather. Which brings us to boredom. Winter boredom is a serious phenomenon. There's only so much snow to look at, only so much tea to drink, only so many times you can watch the same TV show
before you memorize it emotionally. So people develop hobbies: carving, singing, writing, staring. Some stare at the fire, some stare at the window, some stare at life. And this produces philosophers, quiet thinkers, poets of frost. Yakutia has its own literature, stories about endurance, about ancestors walking through snowstorms, about love that survives winters. Because love here has to be practical. Dating in Yakutia is not candlelit walks. It is mutual survival. You look for someone who can shovel, who can cook meat, who can fix a heater. Romance is layered under practicality. Marriage is warmth, literally. Now, death. We won't be dramatic. This is a sleepy story. But death in Yakutia is frozen. Bodies are preserved naturally. The ground resists burial, so traditions adapt. Funerals are quiet. People walk slowly. Breath hangs in the air like the soul refusing to leave. Grief here is contained, not loud, like winter itself. And beneath the ground, ancient things remain frozen. Mammoths, ancient horses, old camps, old bones. Yakutia is a freezer of history, which is poetic and slightly unsettling. Scientists come here to study the past. Villagers find tusks in melting riverbanks, and suddenly your fishing spot becomes a museum. And now, climate change. Winters are still brutal, but summers are warmer. Permafrost melts, buildings tilt, roads warp. People feel it, not in speeches, in walls cracking, in smells rising from thawed soil, in rivers breaking earlier. The cold is retreating, but not politely. And that makes Yakutia nervous, because their identity is winter. Their culture is winter. Their memory is winter. Take away the cold, and what is left? Which is a question no one wants answered loudly. So, they continue. Children go to school. Drivers cross ice roads. Parents tell stories. Shamans whisper to snow. People drink tea and open windows for fresh air. And outside, the cold listens. And as you lie there, drifting, warm under blankets, imagine a place where winter is not a season, but a personality.
All right, welcome back. Still drifting, still wrapped in imaginary fur, still wondering why humans ever went north on purpose. Tonight, we gently slide into a colder chapter. Not colder in temperature, that part is already maxed out, but colder in mood. Because now, we enter the Soviet era. And the Soviet Union looked at Yakutia and said, "Perfect, no one will escape." Which is not a compliment. During the 20th century, the Soviet government decided that the frozen edges of the world were ideal for labor camps because cold is excellent for discouraging rebellion and distance is great for forgetting people. Thousands were sent here. Political prisoners, writers, engineers, people who said the wrong thing at dinner. They built roads, mines, settlements, with hands that froze to tools, with boots that cracked, with lungs that burned with every breath. Winter camps were quiet, not peaceful, just quiet. Wood snapped, wind hummed, men coughed. The ground was iron, graves were shallow, life expectancy was seasonal. And yet,
Some stayed after release, because after years of exile, home was a rumor, and Yakutia had work, which is how cities appeared where cities had no business being. Let's drift toward one of them, Yakutsk. This is the coldest major city on Earth, built on permafrost, on stilts, on stubbornness. Every pipe is above ground, wrapped in insulation, because underground pipes would freeze and then break and then emotionally collapse. Steam rises from the streets, which makes it look like the city is boiling. It is not. It is shivering. Soviet apartment blocks sit in rows, gray, boxy, full of people wearing sweaters indoors. During the Soviet years, Yakutsk grew. Mines needed workers, the military needed roads, the government needed places to send people. Life was structured: work, home, queue, sleep. Cold did not care about ideology. Capitalism freezes, communism freezes, frostbite is politically neutral. People adapted. They wore layers of wool, they shared rooms, they learned which doors stuck and which ones betrayed you. Inside apartments, life was warm and crowded. Radio played, soups simmered, windows were iced over like stained glass. Children drew frost patterns with fingers. Grandparents told stories of warmer places, which sounded fake. And outside, the city endured. Cars were parked nose in toward buildings for wind cover. Engines ran all night. Exhaust froze into crystal clouds. Stores sold frozen fish like bricks, meat like slabs of marble. And yet, romance happened. People fell in love in stairwells, kissed with numb lips, got married because winter is long and loneliness is loud. Now, let's float gently into prisons. Not in a scary way, in a slow documentary way. Soviet labor camps existed throughout Yakutia, in places so cold that escape meant walking into death. Prisoners cut trees, mined gold, built towns that now look ordinary. After the camps closed, some towns remained, like ghosts that decided to pay rent. These places have strange energy, normal life built on suffering, covered in snow. People don't talk much about it. Cold encourages silence. History becomes background noise. And now, modern Yakutia. Soviet Union gone. Internet arrived. Teenagers scroll TikTok in fur boots. Influencers film makeup tutorials at -40 degrees Celsius because content never sleeps. You can watch someone apply lipstick while their breath freezes mid-sentence. There are nightclubs in Yakutsk, which is brave. Music thumps, coats pile up, everyone sweats. Then they go outside and instantly regret sweating. Technology struggles here. Phones shut down, screens freeze, plastic cracks, batteries surrender. So people keep phones close to skin, like pets, like organs. Cars have remote starters, not for convenience, for survival. Some families own 2 freezers. One is the yard. Now let's drift into a road, the ice road. Every winter, rivers become highways. Fuel trucks cross frozen water because that's cheaper than building bridges. Drivers move slowly, cracks echo, ice sings. And one mistake and the road becomes ocean. And yet, goods must arrive: food, gas, medicine, because isolation is real. Yakutia is huge, villages are tiny, roads disappear under snow. Sometimes planes don't land for weeks, sometimes stores run low, sometimes people just wait, which teaches patience, and patience teaches calm, and calm teaches silence, which is why Yakutia feels like a long exhale. Cold compresses sound. Snow absorbs noise. The world feels padded. Even cities feel muted, which is why this place makes sense for sleep. Now, climate again. Permafrost melts, buildings sink, roads crack, old cemeteries surface, old bones rise, old bacteria wake up confused. People talk about it quietly because worrying doesn't warm you. Winters are still brutal, but unpredictable, and unpredictability is scarier than cold because cold can be prepared for, change less so. So Yakutia stands between ice and thaw, between ancestors and smartphones, between spirits and science. Children grow up bilingual, speaking Saka and Russian, listening to pop music, hearing shaman stories. They know how to use heaters and how to respect the forest. And that's the balance. And as you lie there, listening, breathing, imagine a city where steam rises from the ground and stars burn bright, and winter is not an enemy, but an old neighbor who never leaves.
All right. Welcome back again. Still here, still cold, emotionally. Still drifting through a land where winter files a permanent residency application. Tonight, we talk about something fragile, something warm, something that has to survive 8 months of darkness. Love. Because loving someone in Yakutia is not like loving someone in Paris. There are fewer picnics, more shared coats. Dating here is practical. You notice who shovels well, who can start a frozen car, who doesn't panic when the heater makes a suspicious noise. Attraction begins with competence. You don't ask, do they like music? You ask, will they survive February? Couples meet at school, at work, at winter festivals, at tea tables where everyone is already related somehow. Romance is quiet, slow, built on tea and shared silence. Walks happen, but briefly. Kissing is strategic because lips freeze together if you're careless. And marriage is less about fireworks, more about warmth. You marry someone who can cook, who can repair, who doesn't mind being indoors for days, who can tolerate your emotional winter, because long darkness changes people. There is a thing called polar mood, not a disorder, a rhythm. People sleep more, talk less, think deeply, argue softly, and couples adapt. Some fight, some grow close, some survive out of shared stubbornness. Children arrive. Babies in Yakutia are born into blankets, into steam-filled rooms, into families who already know how to endure. Which brings us to the question, why not leave? Why not go south? Why stay in a place that freezes your eyelashes? Because Yakutia is not just weather, it is identity. People belong to the land, to reindeer, to rivers, to stories. The Lena River, is not just water. It is road, it is food, it is memory. Families fish there, travel it when frozen, watch it break in spring like a slow miracle. Leaving means abandoning that. And cities elsewhere feel loud, crowded, sweaty. Yakutians say southern cities feel nervous, too many people moving fast, too many sounds, too much light. In Yakutia, silence is normal. You can hear snow falling. You can hear ice shifting.
You can hear yourself think, which is addictive. Now let's float into warmth rituals, because when winter dominates your life, warmth becomes sacred. Tea is serious, soup is emotional, heaters are holy. Homes are places of ceremony, coats are removed like armor, boots line up like sleeping animals. People gather around tables, talk, eat, drink. Food is not fancy, it is fuel. Frozen fish, horse meat, dumplings, broth. Fat keeps you alive, literally. And celebrations are about sun. A Sack festival honors light. People wear bright clothes, dance in circles, drink fermented milk, thank the sky. Because when winter is long, summer feels like forgiveness. Now, boredom. Winter boredom shapes culture here. You read, you carve wood, you sing, you think about ancestors. Stories are long, slow, detailed. People remember genealogies, family histories, who married who in 1893, who froze a toe in 1957. Memory fills the time, and silence becomes comfortable, which is rare in the world. Silence is not awkward here, it is expected. Two people can sit without speaking, just breathing, listening to the stove. And that is intimacy. Now, belonging. Yakutia is harsh, but it is honest. It does not pretend to be gentle. It does not lure you with comfort. It says, "Survive me, and you are mine." Children grow up knowing where they are from, not vaguely, but physically. They feel it in their bones, in their breath, in their skin. And even when they leave, for Moscow, for St. Petersburg, for abroad, they come back. For holidays, for funerals, for summer. Because the cold never leaves them. It waits. And now, modern times. Yakutia has internet, universities, shopping malls, but also reindeer and shamans and frozen rivers. Teenagers post selfies in fur hats. Elders bless horses. Two timelines overlap, and winter remains the referee. And as you lie there, listening, imagine loving someone in a place where survival is shared. Imagine choosing to stay where others would flee.
All right. Welcome back. Still drifting. Still wrapped. Still mentally wearing 3 coats. Tonight, we move into the invisible parts of Yakutia. The things you can't see, but definitely feel. Spirits, dreams, and the frozen past waiting politely underground. Because when the land itself is ancient, belief becomes reasonable. Traditional Saka spirituality is built around nature, not metaphorical nature, actual nature. Trees have spirits, rivers have moods, cold has opinions. Shamans were the translators. They spoke to fire, to wind, to sickness. They believed illness could be a wandering spirit, or a jealous ancestor, or just the cold being offended. And when winter is 8 months long, you start treating the cold like a person. You respect it. You don't insult it. You don't challenge it unnecessarily.
People once left offerings at certain places: milk, meat, bread, especially near strange rock formations like the Lena Pillars, tall stone spires rising from the riverbank like frozen guards. Places like that feel aware, and dreams matter here. Long nights bring long dreams. People pay attention to them. A dream about a river might mean travel. A dream about fire might mean danger. A dream about ancestors means they're checking in. Shamans interpreted dreams like weather forecasts. Because when the environment is unpredictable, you look for patterns anywhere. Now let's talk about animals. Yakutia is full of creatures that look like they've been built wrong, on purpose. Reindeer, elk, foxes, wolves. Everything is designed to conserve heat. Thick fur, short ears, compact bodies. Even birds migrate like they're late for a meeting. And humans learned from them. Wear fur, move slow, waste nothing. And beneath all of this, the past. Yakutia's soil is permafrost, which means time gets stuck. Mammoths appear when rivers erode banks. Tusks wash out like giant teeth. Villagers find bones. Scientists rush in with notebooks. Everyone stares at something that died thousands of years ago, but still looks recent. Some mammoths still have fur, still have skin, still have faces, which is unsettling in a polite way. The past here is not buried, it is stored. Old camps, old tools, old footprints. The ground remembers everything. And now, the ground is thawing, which is awkward. Ancient bacteria wake up confused. Old graves surface. Buildings sink. The land is changing its mind. People notice, but quietly. They talk about how winters feel shorter, how rivers break earlier, how mosquitoes get worse. Because, of course, mosquitoes survive everything. Which brings us to adaptation. Yakut people have adapted for centuries to cold, to Soviet rule, to modern life. They blend old beliefs with smartphones. They bless cars. They hang amulets near heaters, just in case. Children learn science in school and legends at home. They know how engines work and how to respect the forest. This makes them balanced, which is rare. Now let's float into the emotional landscape. Living in Yakutia creates a strange calm. People don't rush, because rushing wastes heat. They speak softly, because yelling fogs your scarf. They observe, because winter gives you time. And when they laugh, it's warm. Humor here is dry, quiet, like winter itself. Someone slips on ice, they stand up, brush off snow, say nothing. Dramatic reactions waste energy, which teaches resilience. And resilience becomes culture, which becomes identity. Yakutia does not advertise itself as a paradise. It doesn't pretend to be easy. It just exists, cold, silent, persistent, and people choose to exist with it, which is very human. So as you lie there, listening, breathing, imagine a place where spirits live in trees and mammoths sleep in soil.
and winter is a teacher, not an enemy.